Woke college panics, DEI classes canceled, employees fired, and offices eliminated. Coming from ABC News, when DEI is gone, a look at the fallout at one Texas university. Texas is one of about 9 states with anti-DEI legislation in place. And this university really got turned upside down. Universities across the country have transformed at the command of anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion legislation. At the University of Texas, Austin, the legislation led to resource cancellations, office closures, and staff firings, pushing some students to create alternatives to their school's defunct diversity programs. And those private students organizing, that's fantastic. That's what they should be doing in the first place. The government should not be paying for special student group offices, not unless all students have access to them. Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed SB 17 into law in 2023, barring public institutions of higher education from having diversity, equity, and inclusion offices, as well as programs, activities, and training conducted by those offices. The law also restricts training or hiring policies based on race, gender identity, or sexual orientation. Abbott's office told ABC News in a recent statement that the legislation was intended to ensure people, quote, advanced on their talent and merit at public colleges and universities in Texas. And if we get a good result in the next election, positive change, getting rid of all this diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense, we can see these kinds of results that they're getting in Texas nationwide. Abbott's office criticized universities for using DEI offices to, quote, advance political agendas and exclude conservative viewpoints on college campuses. These efforts adversely affect our students, limit exposure to diverse thought, and destroy our education system, read the statement from Abbott's press secretary. ABC News spoke to UT Austin students and a terminated faculty member about the compounding impact the loss of diversity programs has had on the campus so far. The long list of potential college life logistics, like how to pay for school, open an independent bank account, or get a job, is even longer for undocumented students, illegal alien children, and those with temporary status, like a temporary protected status. These students are not eligible for federal student aid, federal work study, are limited in their access to grants and scholarships, and in some cases cannot accept paying jobs while in school. With limited guidance and limited options, Arlie, a student at UT Austin who asked to be referenced by only her first name out of privacy concerns, said her status created many unknowns and uncertainties for her future when applying to colleges. And naturally, it's difficult for people to struggle and to live a normal life, and particularly if you're not in the country legally, if you're a DACA person, or if you're here illegally for another reason, it is difficult to live here because basically you're living off the grid. You're like living as if you're a fugitive. And that's very difficult for people, but you have to come into the country legally, and then that doesn't happen. Even if you're brought in illegally as a child, and that's this person's situation, it's still not possible to fully accommodate you and acclimate you into society if you don't come to the country legally. As a DACA recipient, that was President Obama's program, Arlie told ABC News she worked hard to be at the top of her high school class so she could get into a good school. DACA is a U.S. government policy started by Obama, allowing some undocumented immigrants to temporarily remain in the United States and work. Recipients must have entered the United States illegally before their 16th birthday and be younger than 31 years old on June 15, 2012, according to the U.S. Citizens and Immigration Services website. Quote, it was always kind of told to me like, your education is going to be the only way you're going to be able to kind of push forward and build something out for yourself. It's through your education, said Arlie. At UT Austin, students like Arlie had a place to turn for answers. Monarch, an on-campus student program for undocumented and temporary status students, hosted workshops on those logistical concerns, mental health resources at little to no cost to them, career fairs specifically geared toward undocumented students so they would get job opportunities that all the other students wouldn't get, all of these services, all of these programs, all of this extra help that other students weren't able to access only for undocumented illegal alien or DACA status students, temporary status students. all through programs paid for by the government. They also have panel discussions with undocumented graduates and a donor-based scholarship, so they could get scholarship money at a public institution funded through donors, but only available to people who are not in the country legally or who are here on temporary status. And that's why Texas created a law to cancel all this. Well, those are the things that I would help students navigate, said Alicia Moreno, the former Monarch Student Program Coordinator. Like working with campus partners to create resources and help students understand what their options were, because many students that I heard before they ran into Monarch, they believed their options were really slim. Monarch was a way for the university to ensure students could succeed, despite the barriers they faced due to their status, Moreno said. But why is the government paying to acclimate illegal aliens into a country that they're not here legally for, or they're on a temporary basis with a temporary status? It just doesn't make any sense. Quote, a lot of my college experience would have definitely been way more different had Monarch not been there, said Arlie. Quote, I can't imagine in what situation I would have been had I not had that support system, paid for by the government, by the taxpayers. Arlie, who worked at the center, said the Monarch team would also get requests from faculty and staff asking to hold trainings regarding undocumented students' challenges. Quote, a lot of these students had gone their whole college career having access to these resources, and now they were suddenly taken away and ripped out of their hands, said Arlie, especially for like incoming freshmen who had maybe specifically applied to UT Austin because of this program, and now they're going to get to the UT campus and they're going to realize that program that was supposed to support them and acknowledge them is no longer there. Okay, but you're going to a college or a university and you're not in the country legally. Like, you're not here legally. So how can you live life as a fugitive in a country, also not have access to the vote, not have access to fully participate in society? So how do you possibly bridge that? You can't bridge that, which is why this is like an untenable situation. But in the meantime, taxpayers shouldn't be required to pay for offices to fund programs, provide scholarships, resources, additional benefits to people that are in the country not legally, and not even extend the same benefits to people who are here legally, actually citizens. Moreno was one of about 60 people whose positions were terminated following the closure of DEI offices and related initiatives, according to a joint letter from the Texas NAACP and Texas Conference of American Association of University Professors. So not only did she receive benefits from this office financed by taxpayers, and yes, she's admitted she's not here legally or she's under this temporary DACA status, but they also employed her. So the government and the taxpayers were paying her to do this for more people that are in the country that are not citizens. The university initially stated that some programs would be shifted to other divisions or renamed to complement ongoing operations. Monarch, according to students and former staff, was also initially not targeted by SB 17 since it does not specifically refer to any race or ethnicity. However, university officials later stated that the law changed the scope of some programs, making them broader and creating overlap between existing programs. Quote, we know these programs and the dedicated staff who run them will continue to have positive impacts on our campus and community, according to the letter from the university referring to the programs that remained. The terminations came shortly after State Senator Brandon Creighton, who introduced this legislation, warned universities against simply renaming their DEI programs, threatening to freeze funding to the universities. Quote, I was getting ready to prepare for the next year. My office was just painted. I had just gotten that exemplary service award, and then boom, we were all terminated, Moreno said. Students say they've been left to pick up the pieces without the dedicated resources to support them. Victoria Garcia, a member of a student-run group called Rooted, said her organization has become a substitute for the services once provided by Monarch. It is one of several student-run organizations to take on the responsibilities of the now shuttered offices. That is exactly the way you should do it. If you care enough that you want to create an organization and do it yourself and fund it yourself and help other people in the way you want to help them, it's fine. You just can't take taxpayer money and do that with other people's money. It's not yours to take to do things like this. Quote, it falls on students again to provide their own services, which is a heavy burden, said Garcia. We're going to try our best. Among the centers and programs shut down by UT Austin were the Multicultural Engagement Center, the Gender and Sexuality Center, and the Fearless Leadership Institute, a professional development program for African American and Hispanic women only. However, UT Austin is not the only school facing these restrictions. Schools across the state and across the country have seen similar mass closures and firings following the implementation of anti-DEI legislation. And if these schools had not gotten so aggressive about using these programs to push propaganda, to push ideology, to insist that people honor diversity statements, that they prove that they'll go along with their political ideology, if they didn't go so crazy, they didn't go so berserk with it, they could have kept little programs like this. Yes, even funded by the state, where I don't think the state should do that, but they had programs like this in the past, and they weren't using those programs to attack the other students and the faculty and insist that when people are hired or when visitors come to speak at the college, that they sign off on diversity statements. They weren't doing any of that crazy stuff. They got so crazy and used this to push their propaganda. They all now have to be shut down. Supporters of anti-DEI legislation like Creighton have applauded the changes made by SB 17. Creighton argued that it returned the university to a merit-based operational framework, ensuring that every student, faculty, and staff member is afforded equal opportunities and not silenced by DEI-oriented policies, he said. UT Austin states that it remains vigilant in ongoing efforts to ensure the university's compliance with the state law, defining DEI offices as any office that implements programs or training with reference to race, ethnicity, gender identity, or sexual orientation, influences hiring or employment practices with respect to those identities, or promotes differential treatment of or providing special benefits to individuals on the basis of identity. Quote, I recognize that strong feelings have surrounded SB 17 from the beginning and will shape many Longhorns' perceptions of these measures, said University President Jay Hartzell. Quote, it is important that we respect the perspectives and experiences of our fellow Longhorns as the changes we are announcing today take effect. It is also important that this continues to be a welcoming, supportive community for all. Alex and Sophia, members of Texas Students for DEI who asked to be referenced by only their first names out of privacy concerns, say the services that were canceled were targeted towards specific groups who have historically faced discrimination or barriers to success, but were open to all students. Alex noted, for example, that a closet of free clothes located in the Gender Center was open to all. But if it meant that you got kicked out of the home, or if it meant that you needed clothes for a job, hey, there's clothes available, no questions asked. I don't think anyone's concerned about the clothes. I think the problem is creating all of these centers, having all of these employees. 60 people were fired. 60 people were getting paid before this. They were spending a lot of money on this, and they were excluding other students from it. That's not right. Alex and Sophia say many students they have spoken to did not know about SB 17 until it passed, and they started seeing their centers close on campus. Student organizations have stepped up to the plate, hoping to foster community in a time when university-backed resources have shrunk. They say schools across the state have overcomplied with the law, leading to a chilling effect on classroom curriculum and discussion concerning race, gender, and sexual orientation. Quote, even now, if you read some of the syllabi for some classes, they'll have a disclaimer at the end saying no materials in this class is pertaining to SB 17 or falls under the guidelines of SB 17, said Sophia, despite the UT Austin website stating explicitly that academic instruction and research is not to be impacted by the law. Quote, they're expecting to be censored. They're expecting the state to want to do things against them. And so they feel less comfortable talking about those topics openly, which ultimately affects our education. Yes, it gives you a better education, as you'll see in a few years when you go out into the job market. You're not going to be talking about political ideology all day when you go to work. She continued, quote, we're at a university. We're a place of learning, and learning requires people to be open about information in a way that isn't censored. And when a state tries to censor that, they ultimately harm themselves. Yes, the state is really harming themselves by canceling these completely illegal and inappropriate programs. No, they're not. With SB 17 passed, students are worried the state will continue to embrace other anti-DEI initiatives. They hope to safeguard from further efforts by educating the college community about what DEI is and what it means. Quote, "It isn't just about one university. It's all of us. And silence isn't really the way out," said Alex. "No, the way out is there is no way out. There's no way out of being who you are and applying yourself so you can succeed based on merit. That's all the state is saying to do. They're saying, stop expecting to get special benefits just because you might be in the country illegally or a certain gender or a specific race or have a sexual preference. Stop working on that. Stop focusing on that. Stop spending so much time with that. Join the system. Just don't join the system and ask the entire system to change so that it's completely ruined and not based on merit." Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.